Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Aura News broadcast on this Thursday afternoon. I'm Daniel Cook, your host for the English edition at 6 p.m. In today's news, a huge amount of money has been stolen from the Central Bank of Albania. 2 former employees of the bank have been arrested in the case. Ardian Bitrai and Mimosa Bruzia will be remembered as the people who pulled off a spectacular grand theft at the Albanian Central Bank. Both employees were arrested today by the police. They are suspected of stealing 600 million lek during the last 4 years from the Central Bank of Albania. According to the police, this amount might be even larger, and the police are still verifying the facts. On Thursday, the Tribunal of Tirana detained both of the employees without revealing this operation to the public, since the central bank and the institutions that are investigating the case considered this matter to be extremely classified. Both former employees are charged with abuse of duty. Thanks to the investigations of the central bank, it was made known that a considerable amount of money was missing. Sources from the investigative group stated that the prosecution and the experts of the bank managed to uncover this scheme. Apparently, it is also thanks to the testimony of Ardian Bitrai. He testified that after taking the money, they replaced it with paper so that they would not get noticed. There are other suspects, and the police believe that the stolen amount might be even larger, but the prosecution is working to discover whether there are other people involved in the scandalous theft of 4.5 million euro. The United States ambassador to Albania, Alexander Arvizu, has agreed that the judicial reform is of vital importance for the country. However, he added that this reform needs more time. Today, the U.S. ambassador visited the headquarters of the Democratic Party to let them know the stand of the United States, which is the same as the stand of the OSCE and the European Union. After a meeting with 3 Democratic deputies, Arben Ristani, Oerd Bulikbashi, and Edward Halimi, Arvizu gave his support to the idea that the reform must be discussed from both sides. He also requested the opposition to rejoin the parliament. Arvizu said that this must be a comprehensive and all-inclusive reform, which must also be discussed with the High Council of Justice, the Venice Commission, and the OSCE. He said, "I met today with Mr. Halimi, Ristani, and Bulikbashi, and our primary focus was the judicial reform. I want to emphasize that the stand of the United States regarding this reform has always been consistent. We agreed that the judicial reform is a priority for Albania. The High Council of Justice must be part of these discussions. The viewpoint of the United States is to have a more effective and all-inclusive approach, and the best way to do this is full participation in the Parliament. Our standing is very similar to the one of the European Union and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. This reform cannot be finished in one night. It takes time," concluded the United States ambassador to Albania, Alexander Arvizu. During this meeting, the U.S. ambassador did not meet with the head of the Democratic Party, Lulzim Basha, who was present at another activity at the Hotel Tirana. The Prime Minister Edi Rama has not managed to gather enough votes to approve the changes to the law to the High Council of Justice. 7 deputies were not present in the parliament, and so the majority did not have the necessary number of 84 votes to pass the law on the High Council of Justice and another 2 laws. During today's session, the deputies Tom Doshi, Pierin Ndreu, Parid Tsara, Andrea Marto, Vangel Dule, Mark Froku, and Armando Prenga were not present in the parliament. Considering the situation, the head of the parliament, Ilir Mehta, decided to postpone the vote until next week. The majority was supposed to vote today on the law for the High Council of Justice, the law for changes in the Code of Penal Procedures, and the law on the Customs Code. The deputies who are not present today in the Parliament are deputies who have clearly expressed their opinions against the territorial reform. The OSCE ambassador, Florian Raunig, has once again stressed how important it is that the opposition and majority learn to cooperate. The ambassador of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Florian Raunig, during an interview for Deutsche Welle, stated that the accession talks with the European Union will be achieved only if there is constructive political environment. According to Ambassador Raunig, the cooperation between both political forces continues to be a challenge for Albania. The head of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe added that the political actors in Albania must look beyond their political differences in order to reach a consensus and solve the problems that the country is actually facing. Talking about the next local elections of 2015, Raunig stated that the enforcement of the law is the only thing that matters in order to have successful elections. He stated that most of the problems in the Albanian democracy come because the law is not applied properly. This is the reason why the enforcement of the law is the most important condition to have successful elections, concluded the ambassador of the OSCE, Florian Raunig. The head of the parliament, Ilir Meta, spoke today from the city of Shkodra about the territorial reform. According to Meta, this is a very delicate reform, and it is a process that must continue. When asked about the boycott of the opposition, Meta considered it to be a premature vacation season. He said, "This is a delicate reform. The deputies have their own opinions, but sometimes they are led by the psychological and human emotions that exist in their areas. No one will take credit for this reform, even if it is done in full consensus. This is a very important project that must go on. The opposition must stay in the parliament and take its responsibilities. I believe that to the opposition, this is just a premature vacation season, which I hope will end in September." Regarding the first 300 days of the government, the head of the parliament stated that they have confirmed macroeconomic stability and that the first 300 days have led Albania toward the candidate status. In just 300 days, the government confirmed financial and economic stability, which was something critical in the first days. The 300 days led us toward the status of candidate country, and to us this is a new level and an opportunity to continue with the reforms, added the head of the parliament, Ilir Meta. The head of the Democratic Party, Lulzim Basha, was present at the Hotel Tirana today to discuss the pension reforms. This reform was severely criticized by various experts, as well as Basha. According to Basha, this reform will worsen the situation of the Albanian elderly and will also lower the budget income because the increase of the age of retirement lowers the number of those who contribute to Social Security. Basha had this to say about the reform. The Democratic Party and the opposition cannot accept these actions. If the majority decides to go toward catastrophe, then we will be here to state our opinion. I assure you that this meeting has shown the people that the new government headed by Rama is trying to aggravate the situation without even thinking of creating a better perspective. I guarantee you that this is our first step, but it will not be our last, stated the head of the Democratic Party, Lulzim Basha. The new strategy for Albania's agricultural sector was presented today and Prime Minister Edi Rama spoke at the event. During the introduction of the strategy for agriculture, Prime Minister Edi Rama stated that this is not a sector for survival, but it is a sector in which we can promote values in order to increase employment and exports. He made this statement: "We believe that we can no longer give small subventions just to keep this sector alive, because this strategy has not worked in the last 20 years. We want to promote values and increase investments to make the rural areas good places to live. We increased the supporting fund for agriculture by 70%, and we asked for farmers to give their ideas to different projects concerning them. In order to increase employment and exports, we must create an example of success. We are aware that despite our goodwill, our budget will be insufficient if we don't promote growth within the system itself," stated Prime Minister Edi Rama. He added that the time where money came from immigrants is over, and now the time to invest in new sources which guarantee economic growth has begun. "We must understand that the time of remittance is over," he said. "In order to promote stable economic growth, we must invest in sources which can rationalize our wealth," stated the Prime Minister. The head of the government stated that there has been an obvious increase in exports, and the results of the new politics will be even better. On his part, during his analysis, the Minister of Agriculture, Edmond Panariti, stated that the new plan intends to formalize the Albanian agriculture sector. The Ministry of Integration has presented an analysis of its achievements during the first 300 days of socialist governance. The Minister of Integration, Klaide Gjosha, stated that soon Albania will open negotiation talks with the European Union. She said, "We were given the status of candidate country, but this is not just an achievement of the Ministry of Integration, but of all Albanians. During these first 300 days, we have worked a lot. We were guided by the 5 key priorities that were given to us by the European Union, and we have worked every day to fulfill these priorities. Every day we dedicated ourselves to these priorities, and the next step is the opening of the negotiation talks with the European Union," stated the Minister of Integration, Klaide Gjosha. She added that the ministry has also worked on the National Integration Plan of 2014 through 2020. According to Gjosha, this is the most important plan of this ministry and all other institutions, since this plan brings the Albanian legislation closer to the European Union. Albania must still fulfill the 5 key priorities: the reform in public administration, the reform in the justice system, human rights, anti-corruption, and organized crime. We will continue to work every day to build the institutions which will guarantee a democratic state," added Minister Gjosha. The Minister of Integration added that the first 300 days were also important to have a better approach to the civil society. She continued, "Today we have a sector dedicated to the civil society, which gives its opinion regarding every priority and project that is financed by the European Union. This is not just a new approach. It is also an opportunity that has been given to the people to be part of the integration process. And this was our objective in the first 300 days, stated the Minister of Integration, Klaide Gjosha. She concluded by saying that Albania is the first country in the region to get budgetary support from the European Union. And this shows how much the EU trusts in Albania to fulfill its priorities." The talks continue over the barricade that has been placed on the northern Kosovo bridge, which has been termed the Peace Park. A community of Serb municipalities in Kosovo is entering a phase in which its fundamental establishment should finally begin, says Marko Ćurić. The director of the Serbian Government Office for Kosovo and Metohija pointed out that the formation of this future community, known in Serbia by its acronym ZSO, is closely associated with the formation of the Kosovo government. Ćurić said, "We cannot form the ZSO until there is a statute and agreement on the functioning of other institutions. The ZSO is the future of the Serb people in Kosovo and Metohija. The focal part of the Brussels Treaty is precisely the ZSO," he said. According to him, the community is in the process of being set up now via a management team, and it will be built in the full capacity in the coming weeks and months. He commented on the talks with Pristina in Brussels earlier this week about the contentious Peace Park on the main bridge over the Ibar River. He stressed that the sides agreed that the park would remain in place. After the meeting, Pristina's negotiator, Edita Tahiri, said that they agreed to gradually dismantle it. Speaking for Serbia's public broadcaster, RTS, Ćurić reiterated his position. It was agreed to make a visual assessment of the condition of the bridge by the middle of September, and then the talks will resume with the aim of not changing anything until both parties agree what the bridge and the area around it will look like in the future. Local Serbs in the ethnically divided town recently removed a barricade from the bridge, but promptly brought in soil and concrete flower boxes. When asked what is the purpose of a park in the middle of the bridge, Ćurić said that there are other bridges 100 meters left and right where pedestrians and vehicles can pass unimpeded. One thing that makes a difference is simply that extremists cannot charge with their vehicles from the south into the main street of Kozovska Metrovica and the Kralja Petra street, and thus there is an area in which people feel secure, that no one will spray them with bullets from a car or that something bad will happen, said Ćurić. Commenting on the recent protest in Zubin Potok, when the local officials announced the possibility of ending their cooperation with ULEX, Ćurić said that the protest reflects the poor credibility of judicial institutions in Kosovo. The citizens of northern Kosovo and Metohija clearly expressed their anxiety over the fact that some of the people who were recently elected have been summoned for questioning in connection with events that should be covered by the amnesty law. The amnesty law was enacted as part of the Brussels process, he said. Ćurić concluded by saying that searching for those responsible for the atrocity could bring healing for the whole community in Kosovo and Metohija. A U.S. representative has said that they will respect the choices of Serbia. However, his words did carry a warning. The U.S. respects the traditional friendship between Serbia and Russia, the U.S. ambassador Michael Kirby said in an interview with BETA. However, he added, the world will not welcome a lack of condemnation of the endangering of the Ukraine's territorial integrity. Kirby pointed out that it was up to the Serbian authorities to decide what is in the interest of their state, and based on that, to make their decisions. Serbia said loudly that it respects the territorial integrity of all the member states of the United Nations. But officials have never added a sentence which indicates that it included the Ukraine, as well as all of its territory, noted Kirby. The diplomat also commented on the business climate in Serbia, saying that it was good, and that as the country moves closer to the European Union, it will be more attractive to American investors. He added that it would be good if Serbia appointed a new ambassador to Washington as soon as possible, and that it was important to choose the right person for this demanding job. I am aware that the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ivica Dačić, Prime Minister Alexander Vučić, and President Tomislav Nikolić are thinking intensively about who to appoint as the ambassador to the United States. He said, "This is an important decision, as the ambassador must be a person who will best represent Serbia in Washington and represent its interests," said Kirby. The U.S. diplomat believes that it would be good to solve the murder of the case of the Butuci brothers as soon as possible, but he said that he does not expect that that will happen. This case should be viewed. Also, from a broader perspective, it should be looked at. There is a large number of people killed in the region, and the killers have not yet been held accountable. The fact that the perpetrators of such acts are not detected or prosecuted is a big problem for all the countries of the former Yugoslavia, because the families of all those killed wait and hope to see justice done, said Kirby. He added that he would support the adoption of a law that would prevent Serbian citizens from joining wars abroad, which has been mentioned in public, according to the news agency. Many countries are facing the same problem because people who participate in the battlefields get accustomed to murder, suicide bombers, and similar things, which they can bring home to their countries. We in the United States faced terrorist attacks. They had them in England and Spain, and so it is certain that Serbia wants to avoid that, he said. The diplomat pointed out that such a law makes sense, but it must equally treat those who go to Syria, Ukraine, or any other country. Kirby also told the news agency's bureau in Novi Pazar that it would be presumptuous to have too high expectations from the new government toward the Sandžak region. Serbia must be inclusive, must accept and assist minority people. In Sandžak, the economic situation is difficult, but it is also bad in some other parts of Serbia. The objectives of this government are the membership in the EU, creating conditions for the rule of law, respect for human rights, and creating jobs. These are the things in which they have our support, and I think their implementation will create progress in Sandžak, as well as in the rest of Serbia, concluded Kirby. Regardless of their stance on the Ukraine, Serbia wants to continue to promote defense cooperation with the U.S. The Serbian Ministry of Defense will continue to promote the defense cooperation with the U.S. Army, including the joint military exercises and the training of troops, the Defense Minister Bratislav Gašić said on Wednesday. We will continue to strengthen and promote the cooperation with the U.S., with a focus on the activities that are under the jurisdiction of the Serbian General Staff. This primarily refers to practical reforms of cooperation, joint military exercises, and the training of troops, which are aimed at increasing the level of operational capabilities of the Serbian Army, Gašić said, in a meeting with the Chief of the U.S. National Guard, General Frank Grass. Gašić voiced his satisfaction at the military cooperation with the U.S., describing it as the best and most advanced part of the two countries' bilateral relations. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to interrupt this broadcast and take you live to the meeting of the Democratic Party.
Përshëndetje. Edi Rama prej 2 javësh hesht për agresionin banditesk ndaj përfaqësuesve të opozitës në parlament. Prej 2 javësh hesht Edi Rama edhe pse u publikua dosja e plot e lidhjeve të tij kriminale dhe depërtimit të trafikut të qenieve njerëzore dhe pengmarrësve në parlament. Hesht prej 2 javësh, edhe kur deputeti i tij me të kaluar kriminale, Arben Ndoka, kërcënoi me jetë zëdhënësen e Partisë Demokratike. Duhet pranuar se dje, më në fund Edi Rama, pati një reagim. Teksa fliste për rendin dhe sigurin, ai kishte vendosur deputetin Ndoka në radhën e parë përballë tij. Pas këtyre bëmave mafioze, Edi Rama ka vendosur të promovojë deputetin e dënuar për shfrytëzim prostitucioni në rrethana dënuese, të rënduese dhe heqje të palishme të lirisë së tjetrit. Sot, në lojën hipokrite, banale dhe kriminale të Edi Ramës është përfshirë edhe Ilir Meta. Kryetari i Kuvendit tha se opozita është me pushimet parakoshme. Kjo është një sjellje e dënueshme pasi deputetët e Partisë Demokratike kanë ndërprer marrëdhëniet me atë kuvend ku janë instaluar strukturat e dhunës anti-opozit për të shmangur gjakderdhjen. Me pushime të parakoshme është logjika dhe mendja e dyshes Rama Meta. Ilir Meta do të ketë dëgjuar dhe do ta ketë njohur deputetin me të kaluar kriminale, siç e njohin të gjithë në Lezhë. Dhe ai duhet të ishte i pari që të dënonte aktet banditeske dhe mafioze brenda parlamentit, jo vetëm se e ka për detyrë, por aleanca me krimin e dyshes Rama Meta, me sa duket është më fort se çdo parim, kod e traditë e mirë, vlera këto që nuk përfaqësohen as nga kryetari i Kuvendit, madje as nga kryeministri. Ju faleminderit.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is all the news for this evening. We thank you for watching. Please join us again tomorrow at 6 p.m. for more Albanian news in English. As always, right here on Aura News. Thank you and good night.